as for some reason I didn't grow up with Dr. Seuss, despite us sharing a birthday, as an adult, I am trying to fill those gaps from my childhood by at least watching a lot of Dr. Seuss. I don't really read that much Dr. Seuss, but certainly I'm always on the lookout for an adaptation that I haven't seen, and one of those is Hop on Pop. I will say I didn't necessarily enjoy this one, but I'm absolutely not the target audience for this one, because this is actually, well, it has the subtitle, the book version has the subtitle, The Simplest Seuss for Youngest Use, which is rather adorable. This is basically Dr. Seuss for very early years. And honestly, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And what I think does work about this, and I'll talk more about this in detail, is that it's going to be easier for younger children to understand. The film version, or the adaptation version, was released in 1989. It's about 10 minutes in length. It's directed by Ken Hoin, written, of course, by Dr. Seuss. And the reason I think this is definitely easier for younger children to understand is because Dr. Seuss obviously uses a lot of made-up gobbledygook words. That's one of the appeals. But when you're a very young child just starting to understand words and understand language, trying to then take on board words that are not words outside of the realm of Dr. Seuss is going to potentially be very confusing. Whereas with Hop on Pop, he's pretty much just using words that already exist, but there are words and little stories and introductions to different characters, so we have kind of little pockets of narratives, but basically it's a way to just say a word and then say a word that rhymes, and it's allowing children to start recognizing rhyming. We see the words on screen, so they're starting to recognize what certain patterns of letters look like and how they sound, and how words that look similar are actually different, because words that rhyme might only be one letter to separate them, but seeing them on screen, seeing the illustrations or the animations to depict the different words can help children to start to understand that words can look the same apart from one letter. They might even sound very similar, and it's all about recognizing these patterns and these rhymes. And I think it's an absolute delight, not for me, but I think for the target audience, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It is basically Dr. Seuss simplified. It's all of the great, fun elements of Dr. Seuss, but in a way that's going to be easier for much younger children, and also more beneficial as well, because obviously other Dr. Seuss stories also told in rhyme, a beautiful way to listen to sounds, to enjoy the stories. But I have found that a lot of his stories have a lot of made-up words in them, which of course is one of the selling points of Dr. Seuss. But for young children, very, very young children, that's going to be very confusing, particularly because a lot of Dr. Seuss's words are quite long, and the words in Hop on Pop are as short as that. Hop, pop, mouse, I think brown, and I didn't write any of them down, so these are just completely off the top of my head, but we do have a lot of very short, snappy words, and I think it's very well done. I think for very young children, Hop on Pop is a really brilliant idea and a really nice way to introduce them to Dr. Seuss as well. It feels like Dr. Seuss, but in a much more simplified way, and I think for the target audience, it's brilliant. For me, I didn't particularly get anything out of it, but for the target audience, absolutely, I can see the benefits in this. But of course, if you're a Dr. Seuss fan and you haven't seen this, I'd say check it out anyway. It is only about 10 minutes. It's not tremendously long, so you might get something out of it. And I think certainly for younger children who are just starting to recognize rhymes and letter patterns, Hop on Pop is a pretty brilliant idea and definitely well executed.